What is up, my dudes? This is Seth with the Fantasy Football Dudes podcast. Welcome back to Week 11 Underdog Daily Fantasy Picks. I'm joined by my co-host Jordan. Jordan, how you feeling this week, man? Ready to bounce back again?
Yeah. Man, last week was I guess it wasn't good. I'm trying to think. I had a couple nice. I was sweating like a Saquon Barkley, 93.5 rush yards for
Oh yeah,
a good amount of money, like a 15x. So that kind of sucked. Didn't get there, and then yeah,
I
Brees
mean,
just couldn't quite get there.
yeah. This seems like the Jets are just dead.
Yeah,
No hope
it's
for
just
them.
the game script got away from him. It's hard to trust them right now.
Yeah, for sure. They're so volatile. But let's get into these week 11 picks. I believe I'm first this week. Let's see here. Yep, I am. I have. So this is kind of fun. So I know, like, on our season long pod, we talk about Russell Wilson and we kind of make fun of him, how he was great on the Seahawks. Um, and then he was terrible on the Broncos. But I think the only difference is now that he's on Pittsburgh, obviously he's had, like, we have a small sample size, but he's performed well in the games he's started. Um, but I think this Pittsburgh team is kind of running a similar offense to what the Seahawks ran when the Seahawks were good. It's quite run heavy, but when they need to throw, they can, and they can also run to supplement that throw. And their defense is awesome. So I actually think the teams are somewhat comparable. I don't think the Steelers are as good as that team then, but the Steelers are playing Baltimore this week. Baltimore's pass defense is terrible. Okay. Baltimore's offense is awesome. They score a ton of points, but their defense gives up a ton, especially through the air. Right now, their defense is allowing 2 passing touchdowns per game on average, which is pretty significant. Like I think it's 2.1 or 2.2, which is a lot. And in the 2 games Joe Burrow has played him, he's thrown 9 touchdowns, which is pretty insane. I think over the last 3 games, they've given up around 10 touchdowns passing. So it's a lot. I really like this line this week. It is a higher of a multiplier, so keep that in mind. But it's one I feel like the line won't move, obviously, but I think the multiplier could go down. And that obviously means, like, hey, underdog thinks this is going to hit. So
Yeah, I like that one. I really just want to pick on that that Baltimore Ravens pass defense. So
yeah,
I
it's
can get
very
into
pretty vulnerable.
my first play.
Yeah.
I got Christian McCaffrey over 28.5 receiving yards. Just check the line. The line is still the same as what I have here on the screen. I mean, the Seattle defense isn't anything that I'm worried about. Christian McCaffrey came back. He had 6 catches last week. Was really they used him quite a bit. Like, he basically came back and played his full allotment. So he had 7 targets last week. He played 88% of the snaps, and he had, I'm trying to find 13 carries. So the guy came back in and was just CMC. Like, they basically said, Jordan Mason, you're done, So
Yep.
and they used him so much more in the pass game than they used Jordan Mason. So I really like this. I think 28.5 is the number's too low. Hasn't quite adjusted for him being back off the injury and his normal role. So I don't have the number, but I'd be curious to see what his receiving yards were like most of last year. The line, I'm gonna guess they're
Yeah.
mostly in the mid to high 30s. So I
I
think
I,
this problem's
I
pretty good. I think the number's too low.
Yeah, and what's encouraging about this is obviously, like, McCaffrey's been matchup proof, and, like, we know that to be true, is that when the running game isn't necessarily working for the 49ers, they will pass the ball, obviously, because they can. And McCaffrey still has a high target share even when they pass the ball. He's gonna get 4 or 5 catches a game. Like, it's the truth. So
Yeah, and
I'll
he
get
can
into my
break he
second
can
play.
break one whenever he wants. So
Yeah, right. You can have 1 catch for 30 yards and you're good. I'll get into my second play this week, kind of leaning back to the first game I talked about. I have George Pickens against the Ravens at 65.5 receiving yards. George Pickens has really come on as of lately, I think because of good quarterback play, but also the team I think is just better with Russell Wilson at the helm right now. And when you run the ball and the field gets opened up by the run, and George Pickens, can get to his yardage total in about one catch, and he is targeted deep, at least once or multiple times a game. And I really dislike this because Baltimore's pass defense is terrible. George Pickens has the ability to make big plays. And this one just seems like a free one to me. This one I also might be targeting with an alt line. So you might see I might alt it at like 99. So I think this could be a potential 100-yard game out of Pickens here.
Yeah, again, like I just want to pick on that Baltimore pass defense. So I like that one a lot too, Seth.
Yep, let's get into your next play, Jordan.
Okay, so my next play, I got Cortland Sutton over 50. So I have 55.5 on the screen. It is, I just checked, it's went down a couple yards. So don't love that. It's 53.5 currently. As of we're recording Wednesday nights, a little bit earlier this week. They're playing Atlanta. It's a pretty solid matchup. Cortland Sutton's been just an absolute monster the last 3 weeks. I think that's like 30 targets combined in his last 3 games. He has 200-yard games with a 670, a 70 piece mixed in there, or six. I can't remember the exact. It's like 100 yard plus, 100-yard plus, and then like a 70 plus game with like a touchdown. So he's being used. Bo Nix is targeting him a ton. I like this line. I think it's too low in this matchup.
Yeah, I really like this too. It seems like a lot of receivers as of late have just been coming into their own. Whereas last year, I think we really saw how kind of somewhat bad QB play can really affect it. I don't want to say necessarily the overall league QB play is up from last year, but maybe it is now. I felt like maybe at the beginning of the year we started really slow and then it's kind of gotten better. But maybe I think that's a normal trend really through the NFL. It doesn't necessarily start off too hot, but I could be wrong. I'll get into my last play. So I'm going back to the well here, guys. I know Nico Collins was hurt last week. I thought he was going to play, and I like the line a lot. But Nico Collins, I have him at 70.5 versus Dallas. Dallas's defense is not good, and really, I think the team is just in lose mode now. And Dallas's defense really has given up a really across the board. Like I think this would be a good Joe Mixon game. But when Nico Collins is in the game, like he gets fed targets, even when might be a run, like offensive heavy day. I think they're going to be still throwing the ball. When they throw the ball, it's going to go to Nico Collins. And really, Nico Collins eats up a insane amount of the target share. So I really like this one on prime time on Monday night. So Nico Collins at 70.5, one of my favorite plays this week.
I think he'll fall right back into kind of that role that he had before he got hurt. And he was like a number one, potentially the best receiver in the NFL when he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, he was ended up being a steal for some guys because he's the number one wide receiver, and people got him in, the 3rd round. Stephon Diggs was not drafted too far behind him, and now Diggs is gone. Like this guy has potential. If your team was above water without him these last few weeks, and you're heading into playoffs with this guy, like you're going to be really happy.
Yeah. So there's an issue with this play. I love what I have on the screen here: 65.5 receiving yards from Amon-Ra St. Brown. The problem is, I just looked at the line, Seth, and you know what it is now?
72.
It's 75.5.
Oh, 10
The line's
yards.
gone up. The line's gone up 10 yards in less than 12 hours. So I did this at lunch today. So 12 Pacific time and 12:30. It's not even 9 o'clock. So in less than 8 hours, this line has jumped like considerably, 10 yards. So, I love this play at the number I got at 65.5, but that number is long gone. So I would say that I lean that he still gets the over at 75.5, right? Obviously, the 65.5 was a bad number, too low. I lean he gets 75.5, but like I'm not as confident in that with that number. You know what I'm saying? So
it's 10 yards. 10 yards is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And so again, like I love the matchup. It's a great matchup. I would say that I would like to see like I think a pivot to like let me see it. The Jamison Williams line wasn't up when I looked today. 42 and
One
a
thing,
half receiving yards, Jamison Williams. I think that's a good pivot if you want to go there.
yeah. There's a thing too, like if people still want to use that play, and I know we obviously you can use alt lines for any player, right? If you want to use the 65.5, I'm sure that's just one alt line below St. Brown. Now you're not going to get it for the multiplier, that you really wanted it at, that 1.5, but I think it's still okay. At
Yeah,
75 and a
you
half.
could do like 69 and a half, like a 0.92, or a
Yeah.
59 and a half for 0.76. So I think
Yeah. I mean,
Jamison Williams a good pivot there if you want to just kind of target a wide receiver in that matchup. So again,
yeah.
like I got such a good number, so
Yeah,
um
and in 8 hours, they
little
are like, "Oh, shoot, that was way too low." So,
yeah.
man, we just missed that one. That would've been kinda cool if it was like a Discord thing, where it's like, "Hey, this line's gonna shoot up," and
Yeah.
then coulda caught it at 10 yards earlier, would've been awesome. But
Yeah.
let's get into our, or is there any other plays you like, Jordan, this week?
Yeah, so I like the Jameson one. Had that in my notes
Yeah.
to kind of look at what that was. And honestly, I kind of like just if you're gonna play the Jameson one, just kind of alt line that up to like 49 and a half, I don't know. I
Yeah.
know like it could that middle ground could hurt you, but I like Garrett Wilson over 65 and a half receiving yards. I just think you can trust Garrett Wilson the most in this Jets team right now. I think that's another kind of pivot to the same Brown play too. If you want to just hit the Garrett Wilson 65 and a half, and that matchup against they got the Colts. It's a pretty good matchup. So,
Yeah.
um, Puka over 68 and a half receiving yards
Another good one.
against New England. I think he's just the guy there. Like, I think he is the number one guy for
I don't know
Stafford
why
when he's
68 and
healthy.
a half seems so low.
It does. It
Like,
does.
I think his line should be in the 80s, really.
Yeah. So I think like Wilson, Puka are good. If you don't want to go Jameson Williams, I think Wilson and Puka are good pivots in that kind of that wide receiver tier to the ASB play. And two guys, Tillman over 56 and a half receiving yards.
Yep, I like
It's
that one a
not
lot.
I mean, he's just been a monster since all the guys have been hurt. Since Amari
I
Cooper
think
was
really
traded.
their system's off because of the bye week they just had. Like he has like 280 yards in the
Yeah.
last 3 games before this bye week.
Um,
It seems too low. I'm going to be using that one for sure.
Calvin Ridley over 54 and a half receiving yards. I know it's gross to like trust Will Levis, but dude, Ridley's been a monster the last few weeks, target
Yeah.
wise, like
Yeah.
double digit targets. I think he had like 15 targets a week or two ago. So like,
Wow.
um, and in the matchup, like it's not what they got. They have they got Minnesota. Minnesota's a pretty good matchup for wide receivers. So,
Yeah.
and then last one, I think the Kelsey over 6.5 receptions is pretty good. He's just getting so much volume that I think that's a good
Yeah,
target
I
in
think
that
they're
game.
at
Like
that point
that's going to
now.
be a competitive game too.
I
So
think he's little become. I mean, Juju's back this week, but I mean, I think that was just a one game wonder there. I think D Hop is that deep threat. Worthy's almost unworthy at this
non-existent.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and Kelsey's that possession guy now. I think he'll
Yep.
probably have 8 or 9 catches this week. One play I do like, that's not going to be out. I'm be interested to see what Kittle's line is at. I know San Francisco has a lot of their weapons back. I mean, they're still missing Ayuk, but for some reason, I always feel like whenever Seahawks play San Francisco, Kittle always has a great game. So that yardage line, I imagine, will be in the 50s. I really like that one though,
I thought
because
I saw it at 55 and a half earlier, Seth, and now it's
yeah,
not
I
up.
looked, I
So
looked it up, and now I'm only seeing his touchdown prop. So it
yeah.
makes me think that they're still messing with it. I would imagine maybe it would be in the 50s then, like you were saying. I like that one a lot. But let's get into our pod play, Jordan.
Yeah, so the issue with the pod play a little bit here, Seth,
Yeah,
is that it has the ASB. It's funny you didn't even notice that when you put this graphic together, that the line was 10 yards higher. I just think it's
Trent
like,
did for what it's worth, but
oh, yes, got you.
yeah,
But like it's I So like I love our George Pickens. So George Pickens over 66.5 receiving yards. Christian McCaffrey over 28.5 receiving yards. I think for the sake of the pod, we'll just keep the Amon-Ra St. Brown play over 75.5 receiving yards. But again, like if you're not comfortable with it, you know,
Don't
I think
play
you can
it.
substitute. Yeah, don't play it. Jameson, I like.
Alt
Garrett
it down
Wilson,
if you really want to.
yeah, or alt it down. Like Garrett Wilson, Puka, like. But I do think I say that, but I do think Amon-Ra, like, I would probably just lean over at this number, you know, like I think he has 80 plus in this matchup. It's possible. So, yeah.
Yep, like that one this week. Anything else you got, Jordan?
No, let's have a good week 11. It's crazy. We're more than halfway through this year. So let's finish this year strong.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into some maybe some snow games here pretty soon. I want to watch some, some yearly Buffalo game. Obviously, that's not fun for any sort of betting or fantasy purposes, but just for the sake of watching football, like it's fun to watch that snow game every once in a while. Just hopefully it doesn't happen to feature any of your players that you really need to win, unless you have Josh Allen, maybe. So,
yep.
Anyway, guys, take care. Tune into our weekly show, which we're also going to be recording right after this. That's going to be released on Thursday, and then this show will be released on Friday. So also follow us on our socials at TFF Dudes on X. Trent is very active on there, so you guys won't miss a thing on there. If you guys want to follow us, give this video a like and comment too if you have any questions or you have any recommendations, and also share it with your friends. Thank you for joining, guys. Take care.
This has been another episode of the Fantasy Football Dudes podcast. Remember to rate, review, and follow. For more information, go to www.thefantasyfootballdudes.com. And remember, we are sorry for absolutely nothing.